Hopefully the next 30 minutes, at least what we've decided, we're going to have some fun. We've been having fun for the last 2 hours. And our plan is very simple, to pass on some of the fun over to you guys. But we were thinking that why should we do this panel? How can we do it differently? So we decided that, the context is very interesting for all of us. We've got CEOs and we've got business leaders here. And suddenly in the last 3 years, Dark Knight as a movie appeals to me so much because HR is the Batman Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs. It's true. CEOs have never spoken about, maybe they have, but I've not heard too many talk about mental well-being on the table. We've not had discussions on culture. We've not had discussions on hybrid, the great Indian resignation. We've not had CEOs talking, kya chahiye logon ko? What do they need? So suddenly the menu on the table started to change. And this happened because of the last 3 years of pandemic. So CEOs ask us really difficult question. And I had learning, and the question which I really dread answering is, iska ROI nikal ke batao. It's a difficult spot to be in. It's career limiting to say that nahi hai. So I had to cope up. So it's a very difficult spot for human resource function, L&D function, to work with such brilliant people here. In one way or the other, I also look at them as, Avengers. So if I were to introduce, and this is what I'm cooking up right now, the man there is the silent Dr. Bruce Banner. I'm yet to see his Hulk. But he's got this artistic side to himself, silent, reserved. The man in the middle is Captain America. He's the plan. He's got a plan for everything amongst all of us. And here is my friend Iron Man. He can teach you anything. It also relates to their professions. The man is from Udemy, the man is from Eros, and the man is from Sulekha. So, in case you're thinking, who the hell am I? I'm Nick Fury. Thank you for that.
Without the eye patch.
Without the eye patch. The man who does nothing but just recruits people. So here we go. This is going to be an interesting conversation. Over to some serious, hopefully, Pradeep said, make it controversial, Ankit. Tu jaake kuch galat bol de. So here is my first question to all of you. As business leaders, what is your biggest business predicament? Your nightmare, your challenge, and where is HR in that nightmare, according to you? Are we helping, are we not? Go ahead.
Right. Firstly, just wanted to state here, anything that I say here stays in this room because I don't want any controversy back home. My wife is an HR professional. So, well, I think my biggest predicament as a business leader is the fact is that I'm part of a company that is in this ultra high growth phase, right? And the nightmare is more about in terms of saying, how am I and my business prepared to meet the challenges that are coming up tomorrow? Because the speed at which things are changing and the growth is coming in is creating two challenges. One is about agility and the ability to constantly sort of reinvent oneself. The other is about how are we really looking at ensuring that from a people point of view, we are totally aligned. So expectation from HR really is twofold. One is, of course, the agility, and I would expect HR to be actually ahead of business in terms of how they see things coming up. The second part is obviously about protecting culture, since I need to talk about culture, Ankit. So I'm bringing in that as the second part.
How do you pay for that?
Culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks. So if I can take a shot at that. First of all, thanks and good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see the room filling up again after the tea coffee break. It's going to be around 6, and I guess most of you would be trying to figure out how your evening is going to pan out. So we'll try and keep this 20 minutes interesting for you. The way I see it, the biggest motivation for a person, an individual, is to have predictability and consistency while having growth while having success in his or her life, right? As employees, we expect we will get increments every year, we'll get promotion every alternate year, we'll get sent on international trips, we'll get to learn a lot, we'll work with great leaders, we'll be great leaders ourselves. It's all about personal growth in the context of the organization. But when you flip the hat and wear the hat of a leader of an organization, the biggest concern for you becomes, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay relevant to the audiences that, or the markets that you serve, the products that you create, your employees, your investors, and not everybody thinks or wears that hat of what the investor is doing. It ultimately, it's somebody else's money that is being put to use or good use by us as professionals. So it becomes extremely important for all of us to figure out what's moving the needle in our specific industry, our specific economy, our specific country or geographical context, and how do we stay relevant in the ambit of all of that, so that when opportunities come tomorrow, we can seize upon them. But if there are downside risks that are coming in, I'm able to prevent it. Obviously, this is opening up a chapter which could be very long and would be controversial to some extent as to how do you balance the need for staying relevant from an organization's perspective while being true to your own aspirations of growth and personal success. And therein lies the dilemma. Any leader, and I wouldn't say just an HR leader or a finance leader or a technology leader, any leader who can crack that balance in the team that they work with will make it big. And that's really the ask. So.
Yeah, thank you. In the war of Kurukshetra, there's this scene where Arjuna is completely demoralized, right, with no will to fight anymore. And few months into COVID, as an organization, we felt like that, because we as a company served service sector small businesses, and we served in the quarter before COVID about 50,000 of them across the country, and they're all in entertainment, like events, organizers, architects, and coaching centers, home interior decorators. So COVID has suddenly froze all activity, and it was very difficult to, and we couldn't see each other anymore. We were all working from home. So the complication of suddenly as a business, you feel demoralized, and we don't get to meet each other. And to compound the problem, at around the time of 2020 to 2021, we also had an extraordinary high amount of capital coming into the tech space. So we have, in India, I don't know how many of you know, there are about 1,200 SaaS companies in India, right? And every SaaS company has to build a product. They need engineers, they need designers, they need product managers. So simultaneously, there was an extraordinary demand for talent. And because everybody was working from home, what was not feasible before suddenly became possible, which is companies across the country was hiring from across the country because they could work from home. So it is a compounding of the issues that caused it. And to bring that heart back, that thing back is what both it's a job of the CEO and the job of HR. And slowly we all got back slowly, after about 18 months or so, offices opened up, right? And that is the moment of truth of galvanizing the workforce, bringing the energy back and the motivation back, and to bring it all. And HR particularly has a difficult role to play, and the expectations of the employees also has changed somewhat irreversibly. Engineers who used to get 10%, 15% pay increase are happy, or unhappy getting 25, 30% pay increases, right? And the expectation that they work from home. So it has been a particularly difficult period, and HR really has the key role to play in putting the company back together.
Thank you, Satya. Very glad to hear that. I also want to ask some very specific questions pertaining to the businesses, and I'm going to start with you, Pradeep. Eros is in the business, I believe, of entertainment, which has seen maximum amount of disruption. With the OTT players and the way content was created, there is everything has changed. In my viewpoint, what we see is there's a war of talent, there is a war of tech. What can the CHRO do for you to help fight that war?
So the short and sweet answer, going back to what I initially started off, is how do you keep the organization relevant? I think we all recognize the fact that pandemic has, as Satya pointed out, irretrievably changed the business models, the modalities of working, and what the employee expectations are. But more importantly, it has fundamentally not stopped the march of technology that is impacting industry, right? You think of entertainment, you think of traditional web series and films, and you think of the fact that OTT has expanded, and that's a big deal. But it is more of the same. For people who are, maybe on the other side of 40, they would remember perhaps VHS cassettes and CD discs and DVDs being sold and bought, and then moving on to television and then OTT. So the nature of entertainment fundamentally has not changed. The format in which it gets delivered keeps changing over a period of time. We are right now at a point of inflection where there is a tectonic shift in the entertainment and media industry itself. And I think the organizations that recognize that, and people leaders and leaders in general who recognize that, will actually be able to survive. Now, what is this tectonic shift? It's a shift of technology. Everybody has, I'm sure in this audience, heard words like metaverse, Web3. It's doing something. Everybody's heard of NFTs and some buying and selling happening of it. Some of you may be trading on crypto. Some of you may have heard of tokens. Some of you may have heard of blockchain. I think Ram's presentation spoke about all of these concepts, saying that how do you learn all of these things new? Hi, Dallas. There's just so much to do with the technology that is changing that people sometimes feel that they're being left behind, that they're becoming irrelevant. And as leaders, it's extremely critical that we give them that sense of comfort that the skill sets and the learning capability that they've acquired over a lifetime still remains relevant, but they have to measure up to today's realities very quickly. I used to work in G Capital at one point of time, so my boss Jack Welch used to say, today's headlines will wrap tomorrow's fish. If you are a star today and you are appearing in the newspaper headlines, tomorrow the fish seller in the market would be, wrapping up fish or vegetables for those who are vegetarian and selling it back to you. So I believe that the people leaders in organization, and I don't call it human resources, there's words and jargon around it, so I don't want to belabor that point. But the point is, as leaders, we want to make sure that every single constituent of your team understands what the new reality is, and that recognition dawns on them, and that if they are struggling with finding ways of coming to terms with what's happening, that we enable it for them. The biggest job a leader can do is to pave the path for the team to find their own solutions, may do their own learning. And I think partly because of technology, but partly also because of the way the industries are moving, today there are enough and more sources of information available. It's all about the willpower and the intent of organizations to do so. So I think that's something that people leaders need to drive.
Fair perspective, Pradeep. Vinay, a question for you. Almost every time when we speak to people and we look at our own workforces, there is a skill gap. And I think a learning tech platform has an immense role to play. It has a defining role to play in bridging that skill gap, reskilling, rapid reskilling, scalability. So how do you see that partnership between an organization like yours and a CHRO and creating a synergy which reduces the skill gap? Talk about that.
Sure. Firstly, I think there are certain aspects of implementing technology. I'm right now talking from the context of, say, learning technology, right? And I think one challenge that typically we see with adoption or implementation of learning technology is many a times the why part, and I'm just going back to the word relevance really that Pradeep talked about. Many a times the why, the relevance part is missed out in the beginning itself, right? The reason why you're actually adopting or implementing that technology is something, if that gets missed out in the beginning, then everything that follows, because one reality of this industry is the fact that there is a lot of churn that happens, right? So today I'm implementing a technology platform. 6 months down the line, I realize that, hey, actually this does not meet my needs. right? And then I start scouting for it. So there is it's like a vicious cycle. Every few months, you are constantly out there scouting for the right solution for yourself. And I think that's where the partnership between the providers and then the HR fraternities as such needs to move from certain aspects. And I'm actually speaking this out right now. Like I said earlier, these are hard truths. When it comes to learning, there are certain terminologies that are very commonly used. Push, pull learning, adoption rates, right? And number of hours of learning, completion rates, etc. I think there is a need to move away from there and ask that question about relevance in terms of saying, hey, all we're talking about is actually having the right skills at the right time for the business to address not only today's challenges, but also the changes that are happening, future-proofing your business. And if you need to do that, then HR and learning needs to start adopting terminologies such as speed to skill, time to productivity. Yeah, that also would start answering, in a way, the question around ROI that an L&D professional constantly faces from finance or from business. Because if I have to calculate ROI and if I start working on number of hours or adoption rates, etc., I would never be able to answer that.
Fair point, fair point. I think he and I were having a chat and he said, and I told him that I think there is a FOMO happening. And a lot of shopping gets happened because of FOMO, fear of missing out. So you end up buying a lot of stuff from the market from an L&D HR point of view. But what Pradeep is saying and what partly Satya is also mentioning is that questioning where you are, what you want to be, and the relevance is extremely important, and that should be the deciding factor. But the undercurrent of FOMO amongst all of us is extremely strong. Satya, you touched upon a market which was highly unorganized. You created an infrastructure, digital platform for people which creates employment, value at both the ends of the value chain. Yes. You will also be facing a talent crunch, UI, UX, choice architecture, full stack. We're building that talent. How are you coping up with that, and what's your ask from the CHRO?
Yeah. So what we have found is that the world has changed completely. In the sense, it has become an all digital world. And we also found that the world we were living in is not going to come back. It has changed the world, right? So there's a saying that you should never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So COVID was such a crisis. When we looked at it, we realized that businesses, both large and small, have a need to connect with consumers and prospects completely in the digital ecosystem, because that's where everybody is looking. I don't know how many of you know, there are 650 crore searches for products and services near me in India per month, right? As opposed to any other medium, all these people behind the search have got a purchase intent. It's vast. So we figured that businesses want to reach out to not only our users, they want to reach out to anywhere in the other platforms. So what we have done is we have reinvented ourselves. We created a new platform called ProManage that connects to all the major tech platforms, major distribution platforms. So while we were reviving the core business, we also had to start up a new one inside. And so the talent became even more difficult for us in terms of we needed to sustain the current business and make the new business grow. And what we found is that it is very expensive and risky to hire people with exactly the same kind of skills that you want with experience. So we have to go and find the right raw talent without the experience, because the moment they have like 6 years of tech product development experience, the ask is just off the charts. So we have to get people who have the aptitude for it, who have the skills for it, and are hungry to learn, but don't have the experience. And you got to recruit them and then train them and then get them to work. And as always, I think the emphasis for knowledge workers is threefold, right? One is that I am working on something that is important for the company, that it has a purpose and what I'm doing is valuable. The belief that what I'm doing is important for the company and valuable. Second thing is it is slightly beyond my ability. So it will stretch me and help me grow and learn things. And the third one is I have sufficient autonomy to do it. Right? These are three things, again, come back. And everybody wants face time. They want engagement with their superiors, with the seniors. So to relearn all these things has become the HR function.
It's a challenge. Yeah. Yes. Off to a very difficult question, ladies and gentlemen. But before that, let me ask you, how many people in this room hold a CHRO title, CPO title, Chief Learning Officers? Majority. Okay. Gents, the next question, it has the pain of all of us. हम सबका दर्द है उस सवाल में. What do all of us need to do to become a CEO? Why are CHROs not getting picked up for the top positions is what my question is. Also, if someday I walk up into your office and assuming I work with you and I say I want your seat,
Right.
what is going to be your response to that? Is it a valid question? Do you guys want to become CEOs?
Yeah.
You can say no also. I want to become a CEO, but I want to understand. You want to become more than the CEO. इनको Avengers ही बनना है.
Yeah.
So give me an answer.
Yeah. If I may. So I hope I won't offend anyone.
No, we have drinks after this.
I'm sharing
We'll
with you
forget.
honestly. I hope you do. It is honestly my reaction. There is if I may, there is an Urdu share. When I
Please
say,
go ahead. He's an author. He's published a book. Let me sell his book, and he's a fabulous Urdu guy. Go
Urdu
ahead.
share says that जानता हूँ कि वो नहीं आएंगे, फिर भी मसरूफ इंतजार है दिल. Right? In a sense, this elusive HR, and this has been my experience. I'm no way saying that it is the general situation around here. What I find is most HR heads, at least in our experience, has been they're not proactive in the sense that they typically respond and react to whatever is asked of them. They don't come to me and say, "You're a fool. You don't know what you're doing. Sit down. Let me tell you how it needs to be done." Right?
That's a
one.
fair point. Fair.
Second one is, a lot of times when we're doing business reviews, we'll have, let's say, 3-hour review. The HR head can sit there, but not add an original insight into, hey, this is how it can be improved upon, right? And to be able to data-oriented. I don't know why that is, but it has been our experience, at least, that and that we are trying to overcome by defining ways in which the things can be turned around. The way in which I would say the question you asked, Ankit, is that the CHRO to CEO thing is that to be proactive, to look around the corner and to see what can be done to improve the organization, even without being asked to do so. I think that's the challenge.
Thank you, Satya. Very, very valid point. Pradeep.
So thanks for that. And all those who say that CHROs are challenged to become CEOs and that they have a limitation, I have 2 words for you: Leena Nair. Right? There's a shining example of a CHRO of a successful global company going outside the company and becoming CEO of yet another very large successful global company. Right? Most of you would know that she moved from Levers to Chanel. Now, there has been this management philosophy or theory that has been going in decades. Traditionally, the family owners and family-led businesses had next generations taking over as CEO. Subsequently, professionals came in, and the people who were bringing in the dough, the people who were bringing in the cheese, the sales guys, the revenue heads eventually started becoming CEOs. After some time people realized the value of money, and the CFO started becoming the CEO. So I would say that the CHRO's time is right here. You are almost there from a trend standpoint. But on a more serious note, I think it's not about what functional specialization you come from. You have to invert and look at the role of CEO as managing multiple functions, both internal and external, and therefore be prepared to walk the walk and talk the talk. What that essentially means is that there is, and I'll go back to the concept of relevance, which is a big theme with me in my own mind, and I do believe that it's important. So the ability for you to stay relevant to the organization as people leaders, the ability to keep skilling yourself up quickly. As an HR leader, are you able to read a P&L and a balance sheet of your organization and make meaningful sense out of it? Do you have understanding of where the revenue drivers and the value chain from sales origination to sales fulfillment lies? Do you have a reasonable understanding of what the technology life cycle of your company, if it's a tech company, or a product life cycle of your company, if it is a non-tech company? So all of these, you acquire certain understanding of it, or we all acquire certain understanding of it by observing, because you obviously you're running talent, you're recruiting people who are going to do those roles. But unless you get into the fine grains of understanding all of those roles, and as Satya pointed out, bring in an original thought and apply yourself to it, the opportunities for growth will, beyond a point, start getting limited. And like I said, there also is a sense of complacency at some point of time that people say, okay, I am now a people leader and I am a specialist CHRO, so I want to be an inch wide and a mile deep in HR itself. I want to be a specialist, and if the only way I'll grow is other than increments and money and blah, 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 I'll find a bigger organization and a larger label to work with. Rather than saying, I'll take the same pond that I work in and try to be the big daddy here or the big mommy here. I mean, I don't want to be gender specific, but that's the idea. So essentially, I think it's a matter of introspection and personal preference. I would say there is nothing, zero, nothing that prevents an HR leader or a people leader to become the CEO of the organization. In fact, in other words, I would actually say that they are the most suited set of professionals because they have understanding and nuanced understanding of all functions within the organization. And they have a sensitivity to the challenges and the stress being felt by teams at an operating level, at mid-management level, at senior management level. Who better to lead the organization in the future than somebody who really understands the pulse of the organization? So I would say, bring it on, but then you have to invest as much time, effort, energy in learning and upgrading yourself and becoming relevant for that role. Thank you.
I just want to add one point, which is I think the focus shift has to move from efforts to outcomes, which is, as Mr. Peter Drucker says, as you move higher in organization, nobody really cares about how hard you work. Nobody really cares what means you employ. You're only measured on outcomes. A lot of times, I think the HR function should start moving towards outcome orientation and not just efforts.
Fair input, fair input. Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Satya. I think both of you earned a badge for yourself and a few beers for that promise you made to the crowd. Vinay, I want to come to you from a skilling point of view, skill gaps point of view. Talk to us about how that learning path for a CHRO to a CEO could be.
Sure, and I think, there is possibly, and just to sort of add on to what Pradeep also said earlier, CHROs or anybody in an HR function possibly have a biggest strength that many a times the functional leaders lack, which is the ability to understand people, right? And I think it's more about, when we talk about the skill part and adding those adjacent skills, as I would call it, beyond your core skill, which is the HR skill. The proactiveness to add on those adjacent skills about understanding other functions, primarily understanding business, coming out of that comfort zone of HR and more of the HR processes and the compliances and those aspects as such. And I think technology is helping, right, address large part of it in terms from a transactional point of view. So that is hopefully actually creating that bandwidth to allow HR professionals to acquire those skills and understand business better. And hence, so I don't think it is more about saying, hey, only HR doesn't get an opportunity. I think there are challenges with every leader who is not actually being proactive enough to acquire those additional skills, understanding. For example, many functional leaders don't become CEOs because they don't have the understanding of how to manage people, right? So that's the opportunity from a skilling point of view that I would highlight.
Fantastic. Very pertinent points. I have more questions, but I'm going to take a pause and ask all of you if you have some easy, difficult, complex. There you go, ma'am. Go ahead. Can somebody pass the mic? If it's a generic question, you can shoot at all of us. If it's you want to man somebody down, then pinpoint.
No, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Smriti. I represent an organization named Vinay. My question is, we heard two views over here by Satya and Pradeep. Now, my question is that when we speak about people management, people leadership, there are CHROs who look at the development areas of a CEO as well and help him to overcome that. But do we have this similar privilege as far as the position of a CEO is concerned? So my question is that, what is it that the CEOs are doing, first of all, to remove this mental block about CHROs, that they are just people, they're not looking at objective? And two, what is it that they will do to remove these blocks and how they can help the CHROs gain that position?
Fantastic. For
Thank
that
you.
question first, before the answer comes, I'm going to get you a 30 seconds applause. I think it's a fantastic question. She deserves recognition for that. Gents, I'm very glad I'm not answering this question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I must acknowledge, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head. When the CHRO is doing developmental effort with the CEO as part of the responsibility that he or she has for the entire set of people, sometimes they tend to be wary of the fact that the CEO is a boss of some sort, right? Either a direct boss or you report to the board and you're still accountable to the boss, and thereby you hold back your punches. You're not candid enough with the CEO, and not see all CEOs are candid, open enough to accept candid feedback. We'll give you that, but still it is a challenge. One of the ways that typically I have seen being broken is by actually appointing a credible coach for the CEO, and you feed in what you want to get done to that coach so that it is coming from a third-party source to you. And CEOs use that trick all the while. If I want to do a major change in my organization, I will not announce the change myself. I mean, I'm not saying me particularly, but most CEOs. I'll appoint a BCG or a McKinsey to articulate the same strategy in a manner that you will find acceptable because it is coming with the credibility of a BCG or a McKinsey or a Udemy or a Coursera in terms of learning opportunities, rather than trying to create a course myself. So the answer is yes, you need to figure out how to manage your CEO, because if you want to be the CEO, managing your existing CEO is part of the job. Right? That's one. Second is from a CEO mindset standpoint. I'm sorry if we gave an impression, at least I'm sure we tried not to give an impression that CEOs have any kind of a mindset. We don't have a mindset that CHROs cannot be in the leadership position. In fact, like I said, I believe they're in the right position to lead the organizations. But the expectations are not of the CHRO, the expectations are of that of the CEO role itself. A CEO role will expose you to manage internal deliverables and constituents and external deliverables and constituents. If you're a listed company, it is everybody from regulators to stockholders to bankers. If you're an unlisted company, still you will have your suppliers, vendors, you'll have your sales teams, and you'll have your finance folks and your, So the lifeblood of the business is needing to be running through the course of your veins for you to take on that leadership role. And it is purely up to you. If you get into that mode where you say, I will understand the value chain of this organization, what makes it tick, not just from a culture perspective, because as you rightly said, a CEO can decide a strategy, but culture eats strategy for breakfast every single morning. It's a famous saying, which is true, because if the culture of the organization is not improving, you can't develop a strategy. So, and as people leaders, you have a phenomenal influence over the culture of the organization. So if you are moving the culture of the organization and moving the needle there, you can move the needle in other areas as well, whether it is business, finance, external stakeholder relationship, provided you are willing to commit to it. It's not a walk in the park. It will require that effort, but I have zero doubt that all leaders, and which is I say all people leaders, have that capability, because that is what has got you to this level. That is what has got you to the CHRO position, and it is just one step away. You just need to widen your horizon and acquire the critical skills that would be necessary for you to be seen as a credible organization leader and not just a people leader. Sorry for the longer one.
Beautifully articulated. Beautiful. Does that give you some perspective? Bit of it. Rest on beer. You blame it on the moderator, whatever you do. Do we have time for one more question? We can? One more question. You guys can decide आपस में who wants to. You have a comment. Yeah, we'll take the comment. And then I'll take the question. Is it a positive comment? Yeah. फिर ठीक है.
So, I owe this to the companies I've worked for, whether it's understanding of the P&L or the business.
Little louder, little louder.
Okay, hope it is working. What I'm saying is that I owe it to the companies I work for, whether it's understanding the P&L or being hands in glove with the business. And we were referring to Hindustan Levers and those, even the PNGs. If you remember, they used to have a very, very good program, they still have, where their new hires at a very early stage in their career would go through the rigmarole of being part of the business for the initial few years of what they are doing, right? They understand what finance means and what supply chain means or what ops means or blah, 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 all of that very early on. And I think this is my perspective that, well, yes, CHROs need to gear up and, play their game, participate, have a point of view, everything is great. But from an organization perspective, I would say that have organizations invest in the way that some of these organizations have done. And that is why you see people from within the organization really playing business roles. Now, whether that's a people business role or a supply chain business role or XYZ business role, because they got trained and rotated into those roles, they actually got into the nitty-gritties and deep nuances of that function. And they were not skimming the surface, sitting in a board meeting, listening
Fabulous
to
point.
a
Fabulous
product
point,
officer who's probably had many years of product experience and discussions before they entered into that board meeting, right? So the request would be, as far as the mindset goes, is that let's have those mechanisms very early on for people, irrespective of whether they are in HR or any other function, right? For them to develop as future leaders, whether it's in HR, whether it's a CEO, COO, or whatever.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to take last final question. Ma'am, I promised. Your turn. Can you get out the mic?
You are audible to us, but I think for the people in the other part of the room.
You can say the question, I'll relay it. He's handing over the CEO mic to you. Keep it.
Thank you so much. I feel like that person in the meeting who just doesn't stop answering questions, asking questions and delaying it for others. I feel hated right now. But thank you so much for a very interesting panel discussion. My name is Surmeet Kaur. I'm taking care of HR for a market research company called Nailbiter. Pradeep, I have a question for you.
Yeah, please go
When
ahead.
you spoke about being relevant as an organization, so can you give me some ideas? How do you stay relevant year on year, especially for hiring talent or getting people in, when you know that same thing is also being done by 10 other competitors? What is it that you can do differently, and what is it that you can do to continue staying relevant as an organization?
Correct. So if I heard correctly, you said you were a market research firm. You go back to the history of market research, go back to MARG and IMRB and the kind of primary and secondary research that they used to do in the 90s with interviews happening in rural, urban, suburban settings, to how research is happening today. Based on digital panels, based on audiences coming off both social media and of internet technologies. The kind of questions that are being asked, the validation of test and control groups, the kind of statistical tools that are being used. I mean, the fundamentals of those who are as old as I am would recognize chi-square test that one used to run, and SPSS as a statistical package for research services that used to be done. So the technology and the tools keep changing very fast. I think you need to do two things here. I'm sorry I'm being prescriptive, but one is that give your candidates, give your prospective talent a comfort that you are with it or ahead of your times. I think nothing excites younger professionals who you want to attract more than the fact that you are a future-ready organization. And for that, everybody, top to bottom in your company, has to be with it. I mean, I can reveal my age by talking about software packages that are no longer relevant, but the fact is I need to know exactly what is happening today to make my business successful in today's data-rich environment. And I think that is something that you'll need to do. The other is people that are coming onto your organization, and I know that you're all extremely well aware of Glassdoor and the feedbacks and the feed-forward cycle of information going out to the talent pool which you're trying to target. There is a tangible route of making that a active program where not only are you involved as a people leader, but your marketing team and your CEO is equally invested in that. More often than not, I have, and this is not my personal experience, but I've seen in other organizations where the HR leader just tries to get a budget so that they can manage Glassdoor and get the referrals and LinkedIn feedback positive for you to be able to attract talent. The idea is that it has to be a genuine effort-led change that is then driving the image of the organization that you carry. And I think sometimes what happens is that it is anecdotal evidence displayed consistently over a period of time that makes the brand what it is, makes the organization what it is. And just because you have a great place to work certificate every year or super brand certificate does not make you either a great place or a super brand. The work that needs to go in, there is no substitute for that and there's no easy way to do it. A, be with it in terms of technology and where the systems and processes are today and are likely to move tomorrow. And B, genuinely make sure that whatever teams you have are so well ingrained in that they are your biggest spokesperson. And again, if that's the culture that you build, it will eat any kind of strategy for breakfast and you will have the outcomes that you desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a viewpoint, sir? Okay, we've been asked to step down.
No,
He's been giving me cues all this while. Chalo.
Ankit, I wanted to create controversy by asking one question.
So where is this? Where is the voice coming from?
So it's not a banana republic. We are not telling them to step down. Paucity of time allows me to request the panelist and the moderator to please step down.
We shall leave. Sir, I'll take your point. Okay, 30 seconds.
Okay. So, you
Sorry.
you gave example of Leena Nair.
Sure.
And I'm reading net positive. Okay.
Wonderful.
When I try to relate, I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate role. So isn't it that, the CEOs are under pressure to sort of, deliver and kind of, meet the requirement of shareholders, vis-a-vis you expect HR heads to take care of the other stakeholders' requirement.
Right. I have a longer answer for that, but I'll discuss with you offline in the interest of time.
Yeah, in the interest of time. But thank you for that question. It was the most controversial question of the evening, so thank you for that.